Becca Faust's 8 books include You Are Leaving the American Sector, Love Poems, recently released by Blue Light Press, and Only from Four Way Books 2022. Her new poems appeared on the Slowdown and can be found in Iowa Review, Ploughshares, Poem a Day, Poetry, Southern Review, and elsewhere. Foust won the James Dickey and Fischer Prizes in 2024, and in recent years, the New Ohio Review, Pablo Neruda, James Hearst, and Poetry International Prizes. Other recognitions include a Marin Poet Laureateship and fellowships from the Frost Place, Hedgebrook, MacDowell, and Sewanee. Please welcome Rebecca Faust.
See some familiar faces here, but everybody has post-COVID hair, so it takes me a while to recognize people. But I'm really happy to see you all. Thank you, Sandy and Shauna, for having me. It is such a treat for me to be able to read with Jean tonight. I know Jean's poems well because we're in a writing group together and I have all her books, but I really haven't had the chance to hear many of her poems aloud. So it's a real treat for me. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. This is my first reading in a long time. And, the last few months have been very difficult for everybody. And I feel like we're living, in the words of the poet Ashok Mandelstam, we're living in a wolf-fanged age. And I was interested to see the wolf in Jean's poem and the pun on prey versus prey. You're going to hear that again in my poems. We're like women who live together too long and all menstruate together. We all just start circling around the same themes. But yeah, we are living in a wolf-fanged age, and I'm going to open my reading and close my reading with wolf poems, and you'll see them stalking my work if you read other poems of mine. My poems are kind of dark, and I'm sorry about that, but I hope they also offer what Phil Oakes said is our last refuge in hard times, which is beauty. And I would add to that the capacity to still feel joy. So I'll start with the poem I wrote after the last election called November 2024. Can everyone hear me? Good. November 2024. Shh. Even the moon sometimes betrays us. We tried. We woke each day to a sliver of light that widened and warmed us as the day swelled and waned, and then ached the air ochre and crimson. Sometimes the nights were dark, sometimes bright with stars. We did our work. We read the papers. We read our feeds. We tried to be good. We tried to be kind. We made things and broke things and hurt each other and helped each other. We thought we were being human. We thought we were making the world better, or at least not worse. We thought we were gods with the power to change things, I guess. Now I am standing here in the wilderness, in the North Country, up to my waist in a thicket of osier dogwood, slender stems, a Venus red-blue blur against white birch, against a 1 degree less white sky. I am here to cut stems for a vase, or to weave into a wreath. My old hands, miming a nation's anguish and torsion, as they bend and twist the thin wands over and under and around. Listen, the wolves are howling again from beyond Moose Lake. They haven't read the papers, but they know, as we do, that the days will be shorter now, the nights longer and much colder, and for a very long time. So the question everyone's asking is how to live in such times. And a lot of us have found that the beauty of nature helps and leaning into personal relationships. I lost a marriage and other people I've loved to COVID and to politics, but I have also gained in these years the great love of my life. And this next poem is called Late Love Poem. You sailed back from my past to unrig my future. I had come by then to exist in a kind of wooden ark of the covenant. And so long as I stayed below in the dark, I could feel not trapped, but something like calm. You stepped down my mast, then burned the boat right out from under me. What could I do then but swim? On the way back, wind and waves and flaming debris, but the water was warm. The next poem is from that new chapbook that was mentioned. You are leaving the American sector. This cover was designed by my husband, Bill Harvey, who's with us tonight, from a photo montage he did in college. It's pretty wonderful. And the book was originally brought out by Backbone Press last year, and then Backbone folded, and Blue Light graciously stepped in to release a second edition. And it's not out yet, but it will be out soon. My book was inspired by George Orwell's 1984, comparing his grim totalitarian dystopia with the country I saw unfolding before my eyes. But what I'd forgotten is that 1984 is also a love story involving Julia and Winston, and so is my book. Here's a love poem spoken by Julia to Winston, Shine and Blur. In my dream, there are no thought police, or at least they have not yet come here where we sit on the sidewalk against the brick wall of what used to be a bank building. The pavement is cracked and scaled, and a weed pushes through, burning its tiny blue flare. It's warm here from the sun, the wall warm at our backs where we try with small sideways hitches to occupy the same 2 feet of space. In my dream, I don't shy away when you lean in. No plague, no room 101, no jointed truncheon, no power and God drunk politicians, no flag waving henchmen. In my dream, I do not shy away, but kneel between your bent knees, framing your face with my hands and your eyes with my eyes, kissing you like I remember kissing you before, in the hedgerow, on the shore, on the threshold of a door, opening onto everything, the break and release, released in a river, all blur and shine, shine and blur. The next 2 poems are from the new edition of my new chapbook. They're not in the old one. And the first one is called Tacoma Narrows. No word is safe when our leader lies, and small lies matter as much as the big ones. One whisper of deceit swells in the retelling, then ripples outward in widening waves. Engineers call it resonance when small waves align, then fuse into something seismic like an earthquake, or the bridge that in 1940 collapsed into Puget Sound. Not a big wind, but when it rose, the entire span shuddered, then heaved up steel and asphalt in great groaning waves. Before one cable failed, that suspension bridge was an architectural marvel, the third largest in the world. But every bridge is a web, stayed by many lines that must be guarded and kept like a vigil. So fragile, this matrix of trust that is America. Crucial, the strands binding our faith in it and in each other that suspend us in constant, terrible tension over the abyss of disbelief. The straits boiling below feel closer now and more dire. When words aren't kept safe, nothing is. Truth is the tension in the wire. So truth has become a slippery thing with AI and with our current government. And I wonder how you can even speak truth to power when truth is malleable and when power basically just doesn't care about the truth. A couple of notes on the next poem. It references something called the 2 minutes hate. So that was a mandatory daily ritual in 1984 where everybody was required to stare at their telescreen and engage in kind of a group scream of hatred directed towards Big Brother's enemies portrayed on the screen, kind of like Fox News, basically. And the poem also talks about whales caught in drift nets, which has always been a problem, but it's more of a problem now than ever because our president refused to sign the UN resolution banning drift nets that has been signed by almost every other nation. So Orwell believed that lying in government, what he calls doublespeak, degrades all language and even degrades the thinking and the feelings behind the language. The epigraph for my poem is his quote, "If thought corrupts language, language can also corrupt thought." And the title is The Link. Wow, what a great 2 minutes hate. And the best part was the end when we all chanted, "I love Big Brother." But how can you say to me now, "I love you," and mean it? And how can I, hearing, believe it? How can I share your bed, fearing you might betray me, or you share mine? The language of love is linked to the language of everything. Beneath words lie feelings that do not lie, but a brain taught deceit can weave curtains of guile. But a brain taught deceit teaches the mouth to weave wide curtains of guile. When it drifts into them, love will sink until it can no longer fathom itself or its own depth. The whale will drown. Oh, love, let us stay here in our secret room where there are no secrets between us, saying the words till we make them true. Look, it's midnight. The world is everywhere webbed with drift nets, and what's caught in them, muted and tragic and huge. But we're alive, love, and here, and we have just 1 hour. So I found that if I just hang out in that room with people I love, it offers a lot of solace and joy and a way to get through. And this is another poem that talks about that, about the happy things. It's called More. I've never seen fireflies like this, swollen by mist into glowing glass globes. And maybe the mist is what's milked the moon like a lantern to whiten the bloom of an apple tree whose limbs you broke and laid on our bed before leading me to it, our bed of moss and damp earth by a stream. A vision, you said, when I let down my hair. And I thought of my mother's last words. Is this really all there is? A rebuke and a plea, imploring me to seize more from my own life, and why I can break every vow and taboo to bloom like light and say to you now, love, I did, and also I do. Yeah, so we got married in September, so that's pretty good. Another way, of course, through times like these is active resistance any way we can. And this poem about a wild orchid was written on No King's Day last summer in Ely, Minnesota, teeny tiny remote place near the Boundary Waters, which is a huge wilderness area. Lesser Lady Slipper. It's hard to describe the miraculous lesser lady slipper, looking exactly like what it's called, only not the delicate, brittle Cinderella kind, more like a clown shoe, hung below a tiny triangle face, as lavishly mustachioed as a Guy Fawkes mask. But as you can see, I am trying. The slipper's maroon on mustard stripes make me recall Yeats' line, "Where motley is worn," and how early stage resistance can be banal, even comic, but also tragic, like clowns. The lady slipper happens to be hermaphroditic, no longer legal or safe in this country, and it's endangered. So I can only hope to be able to keep finding it here in the wild, where I'm trying to let nature's tender and surprising absurdities make me laugh like they used to. I am trying not to think about our president or his schemes for the new mines that menace fragile species like this one. I'm trying to believe what Yeats believed, or any shorn Samson. We can be reborn, be transformed utterly. We can be better than this. Things can be better than this. That's why I march with my friends, all of us old and bewildered by the paradigm shift, wearing our jester hats and our soft, impractical liberal hearts on our tie-dyed sleeves, stopping now and then to look down at a bloom whose beauty lies in its whimsy and resilience, or to look up at starlings kaleidoscoping the sky in quick stop frame after frame, wondering if it's time yet to leave, like us, using their own frail, hollow-boned bodies to print patterns that are almost, but maybe not quite, too slight and brief to discern. So if you've seen the new film Nuremberg, in a pretty restrained way, it retools the original Great Judgment at Nuremberg film to make us think a little more closely about the parallels between Germany in the 30s and America now. And this poem is written by my father, who died this month. He would have been close to 100. I can't do the math that quickly, but he died in January. And so I always think about him a lot in January. It's called Fear. My father at 18 was sprinting through the backyard when the MPs tackled him, then went quietly to the war that would warp him into lifelong addiction and fear of nearly everything, weather, cities, travel, but mostly anything to do with the government. Not just the police, but also lawyers, tax collectors, the DMV. He earned his sharpshooter certificate, but as a medic, never carried a gun. At Dachau, he used his Brownie camera to shoot a roll of photos I was not allowed to see that anyway haunted my childhood. The one time I brought it up, he shook so hard I thought it was the DTs. Mute the last week of his life, he cried out once before he died, yelling at other GIs to get down. Among his things, we found the tiny black and white photos I wish I could forget, and letters from a former camp inmate thanking my father for helping him and explaining why he had no children. His wife had been sterilized at her camp by doctors who worked for the government. All that explains why my father drank and feared postal clerks. Horror wearing an official uniform might find him again. Still, that ever-fresh blank fear of his own government baffled me. We were a democracy. Those things couldn't happen here. I wish he were with me now, so I could do what I never did then, to sit with him quietly, understanding, and holding his hand. And since I read a poem for my dad, I have to read one for my mom. And this one is called Lamb. My first word was lamb, mouthed when I saw what my mother had stenciled on my dresser, and that it matched what she had sewn stitch by stitch onto my sweater. Just seeing one or the other was not enough to draw utterance. It was repetition of the image that induced recognition, and recognition that sparked an epiphany to blast the mist from my 1-year-old mind. Lamb, I thought, and some light came on. Later, I would say it again when we went into the country for a Sunday drive, and again when Mom said the nursery rhyme. Later still, I would learn to trace the letters myself, and then the word held history and time and the world, and it was mine. So I'm going to close with a wolf. This is a poem written at the cabin that I share with my husband in the Boundary Waters in Minnesota, and it's called Wolf Tracks. From inside the cabin, I see a long, shallow groove in the snow across the bog we call a meadow in summer, when it's mossed neon green between birch raising a white ovation of trunks to the sky. I put on my mucklucks and mittens and many layers, then hike out to get a better look at the tracks. 2 sets of huge paws, single file. I think first, as always, of the mysteries, the forest's dark acolytes of night and moon, weaving like water through ancient trees. Then of the St. Bernard taken down in a driveway a mile from here, and the reason our neighbor now packs a pistol in her purse. We hear wolves at night in every season, sometimes near the cabin. Usually the broad, wild chord, aching and plural and loud, that reminds me we are all creatures bound by an iron need, but also the shrieking and yipping, frantic and foreign, that signals a kill. When another neighbor heard that sound, he went outside to find nothing but blood staining the snow. Every scrap of flesh, bone, teeth, and fur consumed, subsumed back into nature's simmering cauldron. I'm making my own stock now, tossing in onion ends, carrot peels, and gnawed bones saved the last few weeks. If I go outside and scrape away the snow, I know I'll find a few freeze-dried sprigs of sage and thyme. I will pray for more time then, and the wisdom to eat soup while I can, ignoring the terrifying headlines. I will pray not to be prey to the wolves getting bolder and nearer each day, and to find their tracks only long after they're gone. The kind of sign that used to feel seldom and sacred and wild, not merely rapacious and joyously cruel. I pray I will have time to bolt the heavy oak door before they come, then one day to throw it wide, welcoming the warm winds and blown blossoms of spring in my country, if it ever comes back again. Thanks, everybody.